They got engaged after dating for only 8 months, and Michael told me over the phone, rather than in person, said they were getting married in 6 months, and Amanda's parents were paying for most of it, and he hoped I could come. And I said, of course I would be there. This was my only child's wedding. Where else would I be? And I could hear the relief in his voice that I was not going to make things difficult, that I was going to be easy and agreeable, and not cause problems. The wedding planning was a nightmare. Amanda made it clear that she was in charge of every detail, and that my input was neither needed nor wanted. When I offered to help with anything, she would smile tightly and say she and her mother had it all under control. When I asked about the guest list and suggested a few of my relatives, she said they were keeping it small, and had already finalized. The list, when I asked what I could contribute financially since the groom's family traditionally pays for certain things, she laughed and said not to worry about it. They had it covered, which was her way of saying my money was not good enough, my contribution not needed. I swallowed every insult, every dismissal, every moment of being made to feel small and poor and inadequate, because I told myself this was Michael's day, and I would not ruin it with my hurt feelings. I would smile and be gracious and show up and be happy for my son, even if his bride made it abundantly clear that I was an embarrassment she tolerated, only because I came attached to the man she wanted. The wedding itself was beautiful and excruciating in equal measure, held at an expensive country club with 300 guests, most of whom I did not know, and I sat in the front row, watching my son marry this woman, and wondering how we had gotten here. How the little boy who used to tell me he would marry me when he grew up was now pledging his life to someone who looked at me with barely concealed contempt. During the reception, Amanda's mother gave a long speech about how excited they were to welcome Michael into their family, about how he was like the son they never had, about how they could not wait to watch the two of them build their life together. And there was no mention of me. No acknowledgement of the mother who had raised him alone, who had sacrificed everything, so he could become the kind of man worthy of this fancy wedding and these wealthy in-laws. I was invisible, erased, as if Michael had sprung fully formed into existence the day he met Amanda. Michael gave a speech thanking Amanda's parents for their generosity and Amanda for making him the happiest man alive. And he thanked his friends and his co-workers. And at the very end, almost as an afterthought, he said, "And thanks to my mom for being here." And that was it. No mention of the years of sacrifice, no acknowledgement of everything I had done and given. Just thanks for being here. As if I was a casual acquaintance who had shown up to drink free champagne. Something inside me broke in that moment, sitting at a table by myself because I had not been included in the family photos, and had been seated with people I did not know, watching my son celebrate his new life with his new family, while treating me like a stranger he was obligated to be polite to. And I realized with stunning clarity that I had lost him, that Amanda had taken him from me completely, and that she had done it so skillfully and gradually that Michael did not even realize it had happened. He genuinely believed this was just natural growth, just him becoming a man and putting his wife first, not understanding that putting your wife first does not require pushing your mother out entirely. If this story is resonating with you, if you have experienced the pain of being pushed aside by your own child, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and share this video with others who might need to hear it, because isolation is what keeps us suffering in silence. But when we share our stories, we realize we are not alone. We find strength in community, and we give others permission to set their own boundaries and demand their own respect. So please subscribe and become part of this movement of mothers who are reclaiming their dignity. After the wedding, things got progressively worse. Michael and Amanda moved into a house in an expensive suburb, a house that Amanda's parents helped them buy, and they settled into their married life, and I saw my son maybe once every 2 or 3 months, always at their house, never at my apartment, because Amanda made it clear my neighborhood was not safe, and my home was not somewhere she felt comfortable, which was her way of saying I was too poor to host them in a manner befitting their standards. When I did visit, it was awkward and strained. Amanda would hover, controlling the conversation, interrupting whenever Michael and I started to connect, making plans for their future that included her parents extensively but never mentioned me, talking about the grandchildren they would have someday, and how Amanda's mother was already planning to be very involved, how they had looked at houses closer to Amanda's parents because family was so important, and Michael would nod along enthusiastically, never noticing that his own mother was sitting right there, listening to how insignificant I was in their vision of the future. I tried to talk to Michael about it once, called him on the phone and said gently that I felt like I was losing him, that I barely saw him anymore. And when I did, Amanda seemed to monopolize his time and attention, and he got defensive immediately, said I was being unfair to Amanda, who had been nothing but nice to me, that married men had to prioritize their wives, and I needed to understand that I was being clingy and needed to give them space to build their marriage. And I apologized, actually apologized for having feelings and expressing them, because I was so afraid of pushing him further away that I would rather swallow my pain than risk losing him completely. The breaking point came 2 years into their marriage when Michael called to tell me that Amanda was pregnant, they were having a baby, I was going to be a grandmother, and I should have been overjoyed, but my first feeling was fear because I knew with absolute certainty that Amanda would use this baby as another weapon to push me out, another way to prove that her family was more important and more worthy than I was. And I was right. Oh God, I was so right. From the moment Amanda announced her pregnancy, she made it clear that her mother would be her primary support, that her mother would be at all the doctor's appointments and the delivery, and would stay with them for the first month after the baby was born, and when I asked hesitantly if there was anything I could do to help, she said coolly that they had it all under control, but maybe I could visit once they were settled, maybe in a few weeks after the baby was born, maybe if it was convenient for them. I tried not to be hurt, tried to tell myself that first-time mothers are anxious and want their own mothers around, that this was normal and not personal, but it felt personal. It felt like another message that I was not good enough, not wanted, not part of the inner circle that got to experience these precious moments. The baby, a little boy they named Jackson, was born in May, and Amanda's mother sent out a group text with a photo, and I did not get to meet my grandson until he was 3 weeks old, 3 weeks during which Amanda's parents and Amanda's sister and Amanda's friends had all already visited and held him and bonded with him, while I sat in my apartment looking at a photo on my phone and crying because my son had become a father, and I was not allowed to be part of it. When I finally was permitted to visit, it was for exactly 1 hour on a Tuesday afternoon, and Amanda supervised the entire visit like a prison guard, hovering while I held Jackson, correcting the way I supported his head, even though I had raised a baby perfectly fine by myself, making comments about how I should wash my hands again before touching him, how I should not kiss him because germs, how I was holding him too long and he needed to go back to his mother. And Michael said nothing, just sat there, looking at his phone, while his wife humiliated his mother and made it clear that I was a threat to be managed rather than a grandmother with rights to love her grandchild. I lasted 6 months of this torture, 6 months of begging for scraps of time with my grandson, of getting photos through group texts rather than personal messages, of hearing through the grapevine that Amanda's parents saw Jackson multiple times a week while I was lucky to see him once a month, of watching Michael transform into a stranger who put his wife's unreasonable demands above his own mother's reasonable desire to be part of her grandchild's life. And then came the Sunday that changed everything, the Sunday when Michael showed up at my apartment unannounced, looking stressed and guilty. And I knew before he even opened his mouth that something terrible was about to happen. I could see it in his eyes, in the way he could not quite meet my gaze, in the nervous way he cleared his throat before speaking. "Mom," he started and then stopped, and I waited, my heart pounding because I knew this was going to hurt. "Mom, we need to talk about boundaries. Amanda and I have been discussing it, and we both feel, that you have been overstepping, that you are too demanding of our time, that you make Amanda uncomfortable with how much you want to be involved, and we think it would be better if you stepped back for a while, if you gave us some space to figure out our family without the pressure of your expectations." "Michael," I said slowly, trying to keep my voice steady, "I see Jackson once a month for an hour at a time. I have never shown up uninvited. I have never asked for anything unreasonable. I have bent over backwards to accommodate Amanda's rules and schedules. How exactly am I overstepping?" He shifted uncomfortably and said that it was not about specific incidents, but about general feelings. That Amanda felt judged by me, which I knew was projection because I had never judged her. I had only tried desperately to win her approval. That Amanda needed to feel like the primary woman in Michael's life, and my presence made that difficult. And then he said the words that broke me completely. "She says it's her or you, Mom. She says she cannot do this anymore. She cannot share me with you. And I have to choose my wife. Surely you understand that I have to choose my wife." The room spun, the world tilted, and I felt something fundamental shift inside me, some last thread of hope or denial finally snapping. And I looked at this man who I had devoted my entire life to, and I realized he was lost to me, that the boy I raised was gone, and this stranger who looked like him had taken his place. This stranger who could look his mother in the eye and tell her she was being discarded because his wife of 2 years demanded it. "So you are choosing her," I said, flatly, and he nodded, looking relieved that I seemed to be accepting it calmly, not knowing that I was calm, only because I was in shock, because my mind had disconnected from my body to protect me from the full force of this rejection. And he said yes, he was choosing Amanda because she was his wife, and his future, and the mother of his child. And I needed to respect that, and give them space, and maybe in time, when Amanda felt more secure, we could work on rebuilding our relationship. But for now, I needed to step back. "I need to step back," I repeated, and he nodded again. And then he said he was glad I understood. He had been worried I would make this difficult, but he should have known I would be reasonable. I had always been reasonable, always understanding, always willing to sacrifice for his happiness, and I realized that was exactly the problem. I had trained him to expect that I would always bend, always give in, always put his needs before my own. And so, of course, he thought it was acceptable to throw me away like garbage the moment his wife demanded it, because I had never taught him that I had value, that I deserved respect, that love should be reciprocal, not just something I poured endlessly into him while getting nothing back. He left a few minutes later, saying he would be in touch, that we would talk soon, both of us knowing that soon was a lie, that this was an ending, not a pause, that he was walking out of my apartment and possibly out of my life permanently. And I did not cry, did not beg, did not fall apart until I heard his car pull away, and then I collapsed on my couch and sobbed until I had no tears left, mourning not just the loss of my son, but the loss of all those years I had wasted, all that love I had poured into someone who could discard me so easily, all those sacrifices that meant nothing to him, all that devotion that had been taken for granted and then thrown back in my face. I stayed in that apartment for 3 days, barely eating, barely sleeping, just sitting in the dark, replaying my entire life and trying to figure out where I had gone wrong, what I could have done differently, how I could have prevented this. And slowly, gradually, the grief began to transform into something else, something harder and colder, something that felt like clarity and anger and self-preservation all mixed together. And I realized that I had a choice to make. I could accept this banishment and spend the rest of my life hoping that someday Michael would come back to me, sitting by the phone waiting for crumbs of attention, dying a little more each day from loneliness and rejection. Or I could choose myself. I could decide that if my son did not value me, then I would stop living for him. I would build a life that was about me and what I wanted and needed. I would stop waiting for him, to realize my worth and start recognizing it myself. I thought about the will I had made 5 years earlier, when Michael graduated from college, a simple will that left everything I had to him. My savings account with about $30,000 that I had scraped together through decades of denying myself everything, my life insurance policy that would pay out $50,000, my few pieces of jewelry, including my mother's wedding ring, my car and my furniture and everything I owned, all designated for Michael, because he was my only family, my only child, the only person I had to leave things to. But sitting there in the darkness of my grief, I thought, why? Why should I leave everything to someone who does not even want me in his life? Why should I reward him for treating me as disposable? Why should Amanda and her family benefit from my life savings when they have made it abundantly clear that I am not family, that I am an outsider to be tolerated at best and eliminated at worst? The more I thought about it, the angrier I got, and the anger felt good, felt powerful, felt like waking up after years of sleepwalking, and I decided right then that I was going to change my will. I was going to take away the inheritance that Michael was probably already counting on, the money that Amanda had probably already spent in her mind, and I was going to give it to people and causes that actually valued me, that actually wanted me around, that actually treated me with the basic respect and dignity that my own son could not be bothered to show me. If you are watching this and recognizing yourself in my story, if you have been pushed aside and devalued by your own children, please subscribe to this channel right now, because we are building a community of people who understand that being a parent does not mean being a doormat, that loving your children does not require accepting abuse, that you have the right to set boundaries and demand respect, and your subscription helps us spread this message to more people who desperately need to hear it. So please click that button and join us in reclaiming our dignity and our power. The next morning, I called the lawyer who had done my original will, a kind older gentleman named Mr. Peterson, who I had met through my church, and I made an appointment to come see him that very afternoon because I wanted to act while my resolve was still strong, before doubt or guilt or the old habit of putting Michael first could weaken my determination. Mr. Peterson greeted me warmly in his office, offered me coffee that I accepted even though my hands were shaking too much to drink it properly. And he asked me how he could help me today, and I told him plainly that I wanted to change my will, that I wanted to remove my son as beneficiary and distribute my assets elsewhere. And I saw surprise flash across his face, but to his credit he did not ask why, did not try to talk me out of it, simply pulled out the necessary paperwork and asked me how I wanted to proceed. I had thought about this carefully during those dark days in my apartment, and I had made decisions that felt right, that felt like justice rather than revenge, even though I knew Michael would not see it that way. And I told Mr. Peterson that I wanted to divide my estate into several portions. First, I wanted to leave $10,000 to the scholarship fund at my local community college, specifically designated for single mothers pursuing education, because I understood their struggle. I had lived their reality. And if my money could help even one woman escape poverty through education, then that felt meaningful. Second, I wanted to leave $10,000 to the women's shelter where I had volunteered for years, the place that had helped me understand that I was not alone in experiencing family rejection, and that there were resources and support available for women like me who had given everything and been left with nothing. Third, I wanted to leave $5,000 to each of my 3 closest friends, the women from my church who had stood by me through everything, who had listened to my heartbreak, who had validated my feelings when I doubted myself, who had shown me what real family looked like, the family you choose rather than the family you are born into or the family you create. And finally, I wanted to leave whatever remained after those distributions to my nephew David, my brother's son, who had always been kind to me, who called me on my birthday every year, who included me in family gatherings even though we were not close, who treated me with basic human decency, which felt like a radical act after the way Michael had treated me. Mr. Peterson wrote it all down, asked clarifying questions, made sure I understood that this was a legally binding document, and that Michael would be entitled to nothing from my estate. And I confirmed, yes, that was exactly what I wanted. I wanted it very clear that I was choosing to leave him nothing, because he had chosen to leave me with nothing. No relationship, no respect, no place in his life. And this was my response, my final statement that I had value, even if he did not recognize it. We signed the papers. Mr. Peterson witnessed and notarized everything. And I walked out of that office, feeling lighter than I had felt in years, feeling like I had finally done something for myself, finally put my own needs and feelings first, finally stopped being the endlessly giving mother who accepted whatever scraps she was thrown and begged for more. I knew that eventually Michael would find out, that someday when I died he would expect to inherit and would discover that I had cut him out completely, and I hoped I would be there to see his face when he realized that his mother had a breaking point after all, that his mother had said enough, that his mother had chosen herself for once in her life instead of choosing him. But I did not tell him immediately. I kept this secret close to my heart, like a shield, like proof that I had not been completely destroyed by his rejection, that I still had agency and power and the ability to make choices that affected my own life. Weeks passed, then months, and I heard nothing from Michael. No phone calls, no texts, no attempts to check on me or see how I was doing. And his silence confirmed everything I already knew, that I had been erased from his life as thoroughly as if I had never existed, that Amanda had gotten exactly what she wanted, complete control over her husband with no interference from his troublesome mother. I stopped waiting for him to reach out, stopped jumping every time my phone buzzed, hoping it might be him. stopped torturing myself by looking at his social media and seeing happy photos of his little family, doing all the things I was not invited to, I made a conscious decision to let go, to stop carrying the weight of a relationship that only I was trying to maintain, to redirect all that energy and love I had been pouring into a black hole, and instead pour it into my own life, into the people who actually valued me, into building something that was mine and meaningful and not dependent on someone else's approval or affection. I started small, saying yes to invitations I would have previously declined, because what if Michael called? What if he needed me? What if that was the day he finally wanted to visit? But now I went to book club meetings and church potlucks and volunteer events without guilt or hesitation, and I discovered that people actually enjoyed my company, that I was funny and interesting, and had things to contribute beyond being someone's mother. I took a watercolor painting class at the community center and found that I had a talent for it, or at least an enjoyment of it, and my small apartment began to fill with landscapes and flowers that I had created with my own hands, proof that I could make beauty in the world, that I had value beyond my role as caregiver and nurturer. I started taking better care of myself, going to the doctor for checkups I had neglected, getting my hair cut and styled instead of just trimming it myself in the bathroom mirror, buying myself clothes that were new and fit well and made me feel attractive, instead of wearing the same threadbare things I had worn for years, because spending money on myself felt selfish when Michael might need something. And slowly, gradually, day by day and choice by choice, I began to feel like a person again, instead of just a discarded mother. I began to remember that Dorothy had existed before Michael was born, and could continue to exist now that Michael had chosen to leave. That my identity was not solely wrapped up in being his mother, that I had other dimensions and interests and relationships that could sustain me. My friends rallied around me in ways that brought me to tears with their kindness. They called to check on me. They invited me to lunch and movies and day trips. They listened without judgment when I needed to vent my anger and sadness. They validated my feelings and told me I deserved better. They reminded me that I was worthy of love and respect, and that Michael's inability to see that was his failing, not mine. One friend, Margaret, had been through something similar with her daughter, and she told me something that stuck with me. She said that sometimes our children teach us the hardest lessons about boundaries and self-worth. That sometimes the people we love most are the ones who show us that we have been accepting too little for too long. That their rejection is actually a gift that forces us to finally choose ourselves. At the time, I did not fully believe her. It felt like pretty words trying to make an unbearable situation bearable. But as time went on, I began to see the truth in what she said. I began to recognize that this devastating loss had cracked me open in ways that were painful but also somehow liberating. I had been living my entire adult life for Michael. Every decision filtered through what was best for him. Every resource directed toward his benefit. Every dream deferred in service of his success. And now, suddenly, I was free. Horribly, painfully free to figure out what I wanted, who I was, what brought me joy, independent of his approval. A year passed without any contact from Michael. 365 days during which he never called or texted or sent a card, and I marked the anniversary of our last conversation with a strange mixture of sadness and pride. Sadness for what I had lost, pride for what I had survived and rebuilt, and I realized that I had not only survived, but I had actually thrived in some ways. I was happier than I had been in years, more fulfilled, more connected to people who actually cared about me, more engaged in activities that brought me genuine pleasure. And while I still had moments of grief, while I still sometimes cried for the little boy I had lost and the relationship that could never be repaired, those moments were becoming less frequent and less devastating. I was healing. And then, of course, just when I had found my footing, just when I had built a life that did not revolve around Michael, he called. His name lit up my phone screen on a Tuesday morning, and my heart lurched, because old habits die hard, and part of me still hoped that maybe he had come to his senses. Maybe he had realized what he had thrown away. Maybe he wanted to apologize and rebuild. But when I answered and heard his voice, cheerful and casual as if the last year had not happened, as if he had not banished me from his life, I knew immediately that this was not about reconciliation. This was about something he wanted. "Hey, Mom," he said breezily. "I know it has been a while. Things have just been so busy. You know how it is. But I wanted to touch base because Amanda and I are buying a bigger house. We have outgrown our current place now that Jackson is getting bigger, and we are thinking about having another baby. And we found this perfect house, but we are a little short on the down payment. And I was thinking, maybe you could help us out. I know you have that savings account, and you have always said you wanted to help me, however you could. And this would really make a huge difference for our family." I listened to this speech in stunned silence, my brain struggling to process the sheer audacity of what I was hearing. He had not spoken to me in a year, had made it clear I was not welcome in his life, had chosen his wife's demands over his own mother. And now he was calling to ask for money, to ask me to dip into my savings, the money I had sacrificed to accumulate, the money that represented my entire safety net, so that he could buy a bigger house with a wife who hated me and a child I was not allowed to see. "Michael," I said slowly, my voice sounding strange to my own ears, cold and flat in a way it had never been with him before. "Let me make sure I understand. You have not spoken to me in a year. You told me to step back from your life because Amanda demanded it. You have excluded me from every milestone and moment with my grandson. You have made it abundantly clear that I am not part of your family, and now you are calling to ask me for money. Is that correct?" There was a pause, and I could almost hear him realizing that this was not going the way he had expected, that the mother who always said yes was saying something different. And he said defensively, "Well, when you put it like that, it sounds bad. But we are family, Mom. Family helps each other, and I thought you would want to help us. You always said you would do anything for me." And there it was, the manipulation that Amanda had taught him, or maybe that had always been inside him, and she had just encouraged it. The assumption that my love meant I had no boundaries, that family was a one-way street where I gave and he took, and I should be grateful for the opportunity to be used. "You are right," I said, surprised at how calm I sounded, how clear and certain. "I did always say I would do anything for you. I spent 43 years proving that with every sacrifice I made, every dream I gave up, every dollar I went without so that you could have more. But you are wrong that we are family in any meaningful sense. Family does not discard people who love them because a spouse demands it. Family does not go a year without contact and then call asking for money. Family does not treat people the way you have treated me. So no, Michael, I will not be giving you any money. I will not be financing a house that I will never be invited to. I will not be bankrolling a life that has no place for me in it." The silence on the other end of the phone was thick and shocked. And then he said, his voice rising with anger, Are you serious right now? Are you really going to be petty and vindictive just because your feelings got hurt? I told you, Amanda. Needed space, and you need to respect that. You cannot punish me financially just because you are upset. And that was when I laughed. Actually laughed out loud, because the absurdity of it hit me fully. This grown man, who I had given my entire life to, actually thought I was being punished by not giving him more. Actually thought he was entitled to my money, even though he had made it clear he was not entitled to give me basic respect or inclusion. And I said, still laughing a little, "Michael, I am not punishing you. I am simply choosing not to reward you. There is a difference. You made your choice when you chose Amanda over me, when you told me to step back, when you decided I was not important enough to maintain a relationship with. And now I am making my choice. I am choosing to use my money for things and people that actually matter to me. Things and people that value me. And I am sorry to inform you that you no longer fall into that category." He sputtered something about how I was being ridiculous, how I would regret this, how I was ruining our relationship over nothing. And I almost laughed again because he actually thought there was a relationship left to ruin. He actually thought, after a year of silence and rejection, there was something between us that could be damaged by me refusing to give him money. And I said very calmly, "Michael, our relationship was ruined the day you told me I had to step back so Amanda would feel more secure. It was destroyed when you chose temporary peace with your wife over decades of love from your mother. What I am doing now is simply acknowledging that reality and acting accordingly. I am treating you the way you have treated me, as someone who exists but has no claim on my resources or energy or emotional labor. And if that feels bad to you, then perhaps you are beginning to understand how I have felt for the past year." He was quiet for a long moment, and then he said cold and final, "Fine. If that is how you want it, then fine. Do not help us. Keep your money. I do not need you anyway. I have Amanda and her family, and they actually support me instead of holding grudges." And I said, "Good. I am glad you have them. Genuinely, I hope they give you everything you need. But understand that this is the end, Michael. You do not get to discard me and then come back when you need something. You do not get to treat me like I am disposable and then act shocked when I stop making myself available to be disposed of. This is goodbye." And I hung up the phone before he could respond, before I could second-guess myself, before the old habits of appeasement and sacrifice could kick in. And I sat there shaking with adrenaline and feeling about 50 different emotions at once. Grief and anger and relief and pride all swirling together. And I realized that I had just done something I had never done in my entire life. I had set a boundary with my son. I had said no. I had chosen myself. And it felt terrifying and exhilarating and somehow absolutely right. I knew there would be fallout. I knew Michael would probably complain to anyone who would listen that his mother had refused to help him, that he would paint himself as the victim and me as the villain, that Amanda would use this as proof that I was toxic and vindictive and everything she had always said I was. But I found that I did not care. Not anymore. Their opinions of me had been formed long ago, and nothing I did would change them, so I might as well act in my own best interest, since I would be judged harshly either way. I called Mr. Peterson again that afternoon and told him about the phone call, asked him if my will was still ironclad and legal, and he assured me that it was that Michael had no claim on my estate, and when I died everything would be distributed exactly as I had specified, and hearing that confirmation felt like power, like agency, like proof that I still controlled something in my life, even if I could. not control my son's choices or his wife's manipulation, or the pain of being rejected by the person I loved most in the world. The days after that phone call were strange. I kept expecting to feel guilty, kept waiting for the maternal instinct to kick in and make me want to call Michael back and apologize and give him whatever he wanted. But that feeling never came. Instead, I just felt calm, settled, at peace with my decision in a way I had not expected, and I realized that I had finally reached the point where self-preservation was stronger than the desire to maintain a connection at any cost. I had finally learned that some relationships are not worth keeping, that some people, even people you gave birth to and raised and loved with everything in you, are toxic and need to be released for your own well-being. If you have made it this far in my story, if you have stayed with me through all of this pain and revelation, please take a moment right now to subscribe to this channel because we are building something important here. We are creating a space where people can share these difficult truths, where mothers and fathers and family members who have been discarded and devalued can find community and validation, where we can learn together that setting boundaries is not cruelty, it is self-respect, and where we can support each other in choosing ourselves when the people we loved first refused to choose us. So please click that subscribe button and become part of this movement. Help us spread the message that every person has value, regardless of whether their family recognizes it. 2 years have passed since that phone call. 2 years during which I have had zero contact with Michael. No calls, no texts, no attempts at reconciliation from either side. And while that might sound sad, and it is, in many ways it is also liberating, I have spent these 2 years building a life that is rich and full and meaningful. A life where I am surrounded by people who actually want me around, who value my presence, who treat me with respect and affection. And I have discovered that chosen family can be just as powerful as blood family, maybe even more so, because it is based on mutual care rather than obligation. I volunteer regularly at the women's shelter, sharing my story with other women who are struggling with family rejection and helping them understand that they can survive this, that there is life on the other side of devastating loss, that they deserve to be valued and cherished, not just by others but by themselves. And seeing the impact my story has, watching women leave with their heads a little higher and their hearts a little stronger, has given me a sense of purpose I never had when my entire identity was wrapped up in being Michael's mother. I have deepened my friendships, spending time with the women who stood by me, taking trips together and making memories that belong to us, not filtered through someone else's approval or schedule. And I have learned that there is joy in relationships, where both people show up, where both people invest, where both people care about each other's well-being. What a radical concept that was for me after 43 years of one-sided love. I continued with my painting and have actually sold a few pieces at a local art fair. Nothing that will make me rich, but enough to prove that I have talent and value beyond my role as mother and nurturer. And every painting feels like a small rebellion against the voice in my head that says, I am not enough, not worthy, not deserving of taking up space in the world. I have dated a little, nothing serious. Just coffee with nice men I met through church or friends. And while I am not sure I want to remarry at my age, it has been healing to discover that I am still attractive to people, still interesting, still worthy of romantic attention, that Michael's rejection did not destroy my ability to connect with others or my fundamental lovability. My health has actually improved. The stress and anxiety I lived with for so many years while trying to maintain a relationship with Michael and please Amanda and navigate their ever-changing demands has lifted. And my doctor commented at my last checkup that my blood pressure is better than it has been in a decade, that I seem happier and more relaxed, and I told her the truth, that I had removed a major source of toxicity from my life, and the results were evident in every aspect of my well-being. I think about Jackson sometimes, my grandson who I barely know. Wonder what kind of person he is becoming. Hope that he is being raised with more kindness and empathy than his father currently demonstrates. Hope that someday when he is grown, he might seek me out and want to know my side of the story. But I have released my attachment to that outcome. I cannot control whether I will ever have a relationship with him. I can only control how I live, my own life, and whether I allow the absence of that relationship to destroy me. I have heard through the grapevine, because even though I have no direct contact with Michael, news still filters back through distant relatives and old friends that he and Amanda did buy their bigger house. Presumably they found another source for the down payment, possibly Amanda's parents, and that they are expecting their second child. And I feel nothing when I hear this news. No joy, no grief, no longing to be included, just a distant acknowledgement that his life is continuing without me, and mine is continuing without him, and we are both surviving just fine. There are still moments, I will not lie, when grief hits me unexpectedly. When I see a mother and adult son laughing together in a restaurant, and I feel the loss of what I will never have. When I see grandmothers at the park with their grandchildren, and I ache for what was stolen from me. When I hear someone talk about family gatherings and holidays with multiple generations, and I remember that I will spend holidays alone or with friends, but never with my son or grandson. And in those moments, the pain is still sharp and real and overwhelming. But those moments are becoming less frequent and shorter in duration, and I have learned to sit with them, to acknowledge the grief without letting it consume me, to feel the sadness without letting it convince me that I made wrong choices, because I know in my heart that I did the only thing I could do. I chose dignity over desperation. I chose self-respect over settling. I chose a lonely freedom over a toxic connection. And while it was the hardest choice I have ever made, it was also the right choice, the necessary choice, the choice that saved me. I know that someday Michael will find out about the will, that someday when I die, hopefully many years from now, he will expect to inherit and will discover that he has been left nothing, that I gave my money to scholarship funds and shelters, and friends and a nephew who treated me better than my own son did. And I imagine his shock, his anger, possibly his regret, though I'm not naive enough to think he will suddenly realize what he lost. Amanda will convince him that I was vindictive and cruel, that this proves she was right about me all along, and he will accept that narrative because it is easier than examining his own behavior, easier than admitting that he threw away his mother for a woman who isolates him from anyone who might challenge her control. But there will also be a record, because Mr. Peterson suggested and I agreed, a letter to be delivered with the will, a letter where I explain my decisions in my own words, where I detail the rejection and the phone call and the year of silence, where I make clear that this was not punishment, but consequence, not revenge, but boundaries, where I say plainly that I loved him with everything I had, and he chose to throw that away. And this is my response, my final statement that I mattered, that I had value, that I would not spend my last years hoping for crumbs from someone who saw me as disposable. I do not expect the letter to change anything. Do not expect him to suddenly understand or apologize or feel remorse. But I want there to be a record. I want him to know that I did not just fade away quietly accepting my banishment. I want him to know that I made active choices, that I built a life, that I thrived without him, that his rejection hurt me, but did not destroy me. And maybe, just maybe, somewhere deep down, where Amanda's voice does not reach, he will realize what he lost. He will remember the mother who loved him unconditionally, who sacrificed everything for his happiness, who would have walked through fire for him, and he will understand what it cost him to choose someone who made him push that love away. Or maybe he will not. Maybe he will read that letter and feel nothing but anger that he did not get the money he presumably felt entitled to. Maybe Amanda will tear it up before he can fully process it. Maybe he will never have a moment of clarity or regret. And I have to be okay with that. I have to accept that I cannot control his response or his feelings or his understanding. I can only control my own choices and my own story and my own healing. And I have done that. I have taken back my power. I have rewritten my narrative from tragic victim to survivor who chose herself, and that has to be enough. Looking back on everything now from the perspective of these 2 healing years, I can see patterns I could not see when I was in the middle of the pain. I can see how I enabled Michael's entitlement by never requiring him to give back, never teaching him that relationships are reciprocal, never demanding that he treat me with respect before I would continue to pour resources and love into him. I can see how my fear of losing him actually guaranteed that I would lose him because I taught him that I would accept anything, that there was no behavior bad enough to make me withdraw my support, that my love had no conditions and therefore no value. And while I have compassion for the younger me who did not know better, who was just trying to survive and give her child a better life, I also recognize that I bear some responsibility for creating the dynamic that eventually destroyed us. If I could go back and do things differently, I would teach Michael about reciprocity from a young age. I would require him to contribute to our family in age-appropriate ways. I would not accept disrespect or entitlement. I would model self-respect and boundaries. So he grew up understanding that other people, including his mother, have needs and feelings that matter. I would not sacrifice everything for him because that taught him that his needs were the only ones that mattered, that other people existed to serve him, that he was entitled to take without giving back. But I cannot go back. I can only move forward with the wisdom I have gained through pain, and I can only share that wisdom with others in the hope that they will learn from my mistakes and create healthier dynamics with their own children. The message I want to leave with you today, whoever you are watching this, whatever your situation, is that you deserve to be valued. You deserve reciprocal relationships. You deserve respect and kindness and inclusion from the people you love. And if you are not getting those things, if you are being pushed aside or taken for granted or treated as disposable, you have every right to set boundaries, to say enough, to choose yourself, even if the person treating you badly is your own child, even if walking away means being alone, even if standing up for yourself makes you the villain in someone else's story. Because your dignity matters, your well-being matters, you matter. Not just as someone's mother, or someone's caregiver, or someone's resource, but as a whole, complete person with inherent value that exists independent of what you can do for others. It is not cruel to have boundaries. It is not selfish to choose yourself. It is not vindictive to stop giving to people who only take. It is survival. It is self-respect. It is recognizing that you deserve better and being willing to walk away from less. And while it is one of the hardest things you will ever do, while the grief and guilt and loneliness will be overwhelming at times, while you will question yourself and your choices and wonder if you are the problem, I promise you that on the other side of that, pain is peace, is freedom, is the possibility of building a life that actually nourishes you. Instead of draining, you is the chance to discover who you are when you are not constantly sacrificing yourself on the altar of someone else's happiness. I am 68 years old. I am alone in many ways. My son does not speak to me, and probably never will. I do not have the grandmotherly relationship with Jackson that I dreamed of. I do not have the big family gatherings and the multi-generational holidays that I thought would define my later years, but I also have something I never had before. I have peace. I have self-respect. I have a life that is mine. I have friendships based on mutual care. I have activities and interests that fulfill me. I have mornings when I wake up without that heavy feeling of dread and anxiety. I have days when I feel joy that is not dependent on someone else's mood or approval. I have the knowledge that I finally chose myself. And while I grieve what I lost, I also celebrate what I found. My own strength, my own worth, my own ability to survive and thrive, even after the person I loved most in the world threw me away. If my story resonates with you, if you see yourself in my pain, or my choices, or my journey toward healing, please subscribe to this channel right now. Please share this video with others who might need to hear it. Please leave a comment telling me your story, or telling me that you are not alone, because isolation is what keeps us suffering in silence. But when we share our truths, we realize that so many others have walked this path, that we are part of a community of survivors, that our experiences matter, and our voices have power. So please join us, become part of this movement of people who are choosing dignity over desperation, self-respect over settling, boundaries over endless sacrifice, and together we can heal. Together we can thrive. Together we can build lives that honor us instead of diminishing us. My name is Dorothy. I am 68 years old. My son's new wife made him choose between her and me, and I made a choice too. I chose myself. I changed my will. I set boundaries. I walked away from a toxic situation, and while it cost me the relationship I valued most in this world, it saved my life. It gave me back myself. It taught me that I have value even when the people I love cannot see it. And if I had to do it all over again, knowing everything I know now, understanding all the pain and loss and loneliness that would come, I would make the same choice, because choosing yourself is never the wrong choice. Honoring your own worth is never a mistake, and setting boundaries with people who treat you badly is never something to apologize for. It is something to be proud of, something to celebrate, something to share with others. So they know they can do it too. They can survive, they can heal, they can build beautiful lives even after devastating loss. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for staying with me through all of this pain and revelation. Thank you for being part of this community of truth-tellers and survivors. Please subscribe, please share, please comment, and please know that wherever you are, whatever you are going through, you are not alone. You are valued, you are worthy, and you deserve so much better than being treated as disposable by the people you love. Choose yourself, set boundaries, reclaim your dignity, and build a life that honors you, because you are worth it. You have always been worth it, and it is never too late to start believing that.